All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first of many We Add Wednesdays in June. SC Safe Seniors is proud to be a part of this amazing multidisciplinary group of professionals who are working together to ensure older adults in South Carolina age gracefully, peacefully, and respectfully in our state. Please plan to join us every Wednesday this month for a variety of virtual and in-person events. We'll be putting those links in the chat throughout the webinar, so check out the chat whenever you can. We wanted to kick off with a short welcome message from one of our community partners and members of the SC WEAD Planning Committee, Jamie Roper. And hold for 1 moment.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jamie Roper, and I head the City of Charleston Mayor's Office on Aging. Our office adds support, education, and information to the senior community. We try to do all that we can to help our seniors, their caregivers, and their family members maneuver as their families get older. Many of the people are in the dark when it comes to elder abuse, but turning a blind eye only makes the problem worse, whether that's physical, financial, emotional, or neglect. It is time that we face reality, which is exactly what the City of Charleston has done. In 2016, we were fortunate enough to be one of 9 cities to receive a grant to end abuse in later life that was administered by the Department of Justice and the Office of Violence Against Women. Since that time, the city has led the charge. Our efforts toward ending elder abuse has become great. We have gone from one city looking at the problem and trying to address it to collaborating with numerous city, state, and even federal organizations to bring a spotlight on this issue. I'm so glad to say that over the last 7 years, our initiative has greatly grown. So from that growth, you all will be receiving excellent information throughout this week with all the events we have. Again, thank you for joining us, and know that we appreciate all that you do. Let us all work together to end abuse of our elderly population. We can do this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that encouraging message, Jamie. Today, our talk is responding to elder mistreatment from all angles, legal and healthcare perspectives. Some of you may be asking, what is WEAD? WEAD, or World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, provides an opportunity for communities around the world to promote a better understanding of abuse and neglect of older persons by raising awareness of the cultural, social, economic, and demographic processes affecting elder abuse and neglect. That's exactly our goal with these WEAD Wednesdays. A quick thank you to our partners who have played a major role in organizing, promoting, and raising awareness of these events. And here are all their logos right here, and you'll be hearing from them throughout the month. Today, you are going to hear from 4 speakers: Susan Ingalls with SC Legal Services, Julie Watson with MUSC Clinical Forensics Program, and Teresa Skojet, our Mental Health Services Manager. I am Mara Allport, also with SC Safe Seniors along with Teresa. SC Safe Seniors provides free training to healthcare providers on how to identify and refer elder mistreatment, as well as free mental health support to older adult victims of elder mistreatment. This hybrid training today will provide a multidisciplinary approach on how you can identify, assess, and refer cases of confirmed or suspected elder abuse and mistreatment in South Carolina. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Julie Watson, who is going to give an overview of the healthcare perspective. Thank you. And Julie, are you able to unmute? Julie, can you hear? It looks like Julie is having a little bit of technical difficulties. Let me get her on the phone really quick and just see. Julie, you may need to click that GoToWebinar app at the bottom of your screen.
Well, everyone, while Julie's getting her sound going here, this is Susie Ingalls with South Carolina Legal Services. I'd just like to take a moment while I have one to just thank our speakers today. We really appreciate our partnership with FC Safe Seniors. They do such a great job, and we're just so excited to be able to partner with them to kick off the World Elder Abuse Awareness activities for this month. So thank you guys from SC Safe Seniors out of the College of Nursing at MUSC. Hopefully we'll be getting Julie on there momentarily. But definitely stay tuned for all the great information that we have for you. We're looking at elder abuse from all, really two angles, health and legal, and there's so many angles when it comes to our elderly population in South Carolina, and we really appreciate that everyone who's joined us, because it's really important information that will be shared by all of our speakers today to help you recognize the various perspectives that our older population is coming from and how we can all help them. Okay.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. There was a mute that I could not unmute. I am so sorry. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Julie Watson. I work with the MUSC Clinical Forensics Program. I'm a nurse on the team. My full-time role is Elder Vulnerable Adult Abuse Specialist. I want to tell you just a little bit about our team and then more specifically about my role. So the team is all RN led. We do have a medical director, but when I say RN led, I mean our entire team provides care. Everybody that provides care is an RN. So we used to be called the SANE team, which was the Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner team. Historically, that is what we were known as, but we recently have changed to Clinical Forensics Program because our umbrella has widened to now seeing so many other types of victims. So we see patients or victims of domestic violence, human trafficking, non-fatal strangulation, elder vulnerable adult abuse, and sexual assault. Our role is basically, it's very different depending on the type of patient that we're seeing, but we have a private exam room where we see our sexual assault victims. We are trained through a 40-hour week-long course, trained in forensics, and we are providing basically assessment, examination, forensic evidence collection, forensic photography, reporting, referring. We work closely with our community partners. We provide teaching and outreach, and we're involved with many awareness programs. As far as my specific role, the way that it works is it's a referral process. So I take referrals from, I see patients just within Medical University. I don't travel to other hospitals or facilities. I can work with them, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but basically the way it works within our walls of MUSC is I get referrals from anyone. It can be from a family member, it can be from the patient themselves, it can be from a nurse, a physician, a physical therapist, whoever. If they feel like somebody is showing some suspicious signs of abuse, they can call and basically ask for a consult. I'll see the patient, do an assessment, do an exam of whatever injuries they may have. If there's signs of neglect, I'm reviewing labs and history, just really digging into the history and determining what's going on. We really do in-depth assessment of injury, of bruising, of any type of injury. And we do what's called body mapping, and that's just a really detailed diagram of all injuries with measurements and descriptions. And then we do forensic photography. As far as reporting goes, this, you know, when you talk about the different agencies that you report to, if we do see signs of abuse, we will report anybody that's living in a facility. We report that to the state ombudsman. We report if somebody's living in the community and they are a vulnerable adult. So in our state, a vulnerable adult is someone that is 18 years of age or older, and due to cognitive or physical impairments, they are unable to care for themselves and they have to have a caregiver. So if they're a vulnerable adult and we see signs of abuse, we report that to APS through DSS. If we've got someone that's elderly and they're being abused, but they're not a vulnerable adult, let's say they are totally independent, caring for themselves, if it's a domestic violence situation or an assault situation, that would be reported to law enforcement if the elder wants it to be. It's not mandated at that point unless they're a vulnerable adult. So that's reporting. And basically what I do is I see a patient, do my assessment. I work really closely with our social work team. We have a specialized social work team that sees victims of all different types of abuse. And we collaborate and decide if we think there's abuse. And then obviously we're not determining if there's an abuse. We're not the investigator. We're just determining if there's suspicion. So then we're reporting that collaboratively to the appropriate agency. I will go in and do court testimony if necessary, and if I'm called upon to do that. I'm involved with many different community, like I said before, in particular with our community coordinated response team through the Mayor's Office on Aging, which is a group that really helps or works to raise awareness of elder abuse in our community. And then as far as collaboration outside of MUSC, I just want to put this out there. Even though I don't see patients outside of our hospital, I do work with others. So if I got a phone call and someone says, I'm really concerned about this, they could be from any other hospital or any other agency. If they call and want me to look at a photo of a particular injury, or if they want me to review a case with them, I can certainly do that and offer expert advice on if we think that this is abuse or not. And as far as referrals, I will say this, I can also take them from law enforcement. I've had the mayor's office call me before with a patient that was in the hospital and asked me to please see them, and the same with law enforcement. So that's my role in a nutshell. So I just want to talk a little bit about trauma-informed care. This is the kind of care that we all strive to provide as forensic nurses, but it's important that all of us, everyone on this call that is taking care of victims or working with victims of potential assault, that they utilize trauma-informed care. So understanding trauma, the basics of trauma first, is the most important thing. So what we know about trauma is that it results from an experience that is perceived to be harmful, whether it's an emotionally harmful or physically harmful. We know that these effects can be pervasive, long-term, and they can really have an effect on every aspect of a person's being, whether it's mental, physical, social, or spiritual. So when we think about types of trauma, you know, immediately we go to like abuse, childhood abuse. We think about sexual assault, domestic violence. We think about those kinds of things. But there are many, many things that can fall under trauma. And I've listed a few here. Combat, that's something that people think of often, but discrimination, poverty, but it can even be things like being bullied as a child. It can be going through a traumatic divorce, a death. It can be, you know, for us and those in the hospital, the patients we take care of, they might be someone who's been through many, many medical procedures, maybe even through their childhood, that were perceived as traumatic for them. So really understanding what trauma is and can be is important as we take care of these patients. And studies show that 61% of men and 51% of women have experienced at least one traumatic event in their lifetime. So that's important to know, that the majority has been through something that is considered traumatic. Okay, so it's just some points on trauma-informed care. This has providers in all settings, but this is really for anybody. This is important, honestly, in our day-to-day life and dealing with other people, and just not really knowing what someone has been through, but understanding that if they have been through things, they might respond differently, or and we'll talk about that in a minute, being subjective. We use this approach in forensic nursing all the time, just knowing that somebody who's been through this trauma that we're seeing them for also might have lifelong types of events that were traumatic, and that just compounds the issue. And what we're striving for, what all of us are striving for, is that these people feel safe and that we can work with them in a safe and healthy environment. Those that have experienced traumatic events during childhood, this can really increase the risk of unhealthy behavior. So we see this a lot with the kind of patients that we see. Many of our sexual assault victims have been traumatized in the past. With our elder patients, our vulnerable adults, just knowing that very likely, like we said, most people have been through at least one traumatic event in their life. You have to bring that to the table as you're caring for them. So what I was about to mention before, trauma is subjective. That is something that everybody needs to remember. And what that basically means is what's traumatic to you might not be traumatic to me. And the way that you respond to trauma might not be the way that I respond to trauma. So this is a key that everyone needs to remember. If you have a preconceived idea of how someone's supposed to act, that's going to be wrong, because if you have an idea in your mind that somebody that's a victim is going to be crying or angry or upset, but in fact they're stoic, they're not crying at all, they might even be giggling or angry toward you. Everybody responds to trauma in a different way. And that is what we always have to remember, because if we have these preconceived ideas of how they should respond, what that can lead to is victim blaming, or reducing their credibility as they're telling their story. So just please remember that trauma is subjective. Our whole goal is to work hard not to re-traumatize them. And that's a much bigger deal with sexual assault when we're doing examinations, but also with elder abuse assessments. Okay, so instead of going through these are the principles, the key principles of trauma-informed care. Instead of going through each of them, what I was going to do is just tell you about a case that I have had and how we use trauma-informed care to take care of her. So I had a 98-year-old patient who was in the emergency room. She had been severely physically abused by her 58-year-old son. And he was cognitively impaired. He had been, I don't recall what his issues were, but she had been his caregiver his entire life. And then things switched as she became the patient and he became the caregiver. And then, this severe abuse occurred. So when I met with her, she was in the ED. She was lying in the middle of a very brightly lit room, a very large, brightly lit exam room. And when I arrived, there were at least, oh my goodness, I think there were 4 nurses in the room, because they had a couple of student nurses training on some equipment. There was law enforcement there, and I think there were 3 law enforcement officers, because the detective had arrived as well. The charge nurse was in and out of the room with different things. I remember walking into complete chaos. And in the middle of all the chaos lay this vulnerable adult who had been abused by her son. So, basically we knew right away that we needed to make this a more conducive environment to talk to her. And after the medical folks had finished what they needed, we basically cleared out as many people as we could. We asked the patient who she would like to remain in the room or not. And basically she wanted no one in the room except, just the two of us that were with the forensic team. We dimmed the lights. We pulled up a chair next to her. We got at eye level. We made sure she could see and hear us well. We introduced ourselves. We were very clear about what our role was so that there was nothing hidden. We made sure she understood mandated reporting. We made sure she understood what a vulnerable adult was so that there were no surprises when a report had to be made. And all this was about creating a safe environment, a comfortable environment for her. She was definitely uncomfortable. That's one of the things that as a nurse, I jumped right on. She still had all the emergency room, or not emergency room, but the EMS paper coverings were all over her. We got her more situated on the stretcher so she was more comfortable. So it was all about creating a comfortable, safe environment, telling her who we were and being very transparent about who we were. We told her what we could offer as far as services or, basically my role. I told her that I could take photos of her injuries, but that was her choice. It's not something I had to do. I gave her the power to make that decision. She did know that reports had to be made, and that was something I was mandated to do, and she understood that. But one of the big things that we brought into the conversation was we really acknowledged what she wasn't saying, which was the most likely fears that she was having of what's going to happen when he's reported. Where am I going to live then? Who's going to take care of me then? What's going to happen to my dear precious son who I love? Who's going to take care of him, and is he going to get in trouble? These are things that we had to consider with her age, with where she was in her life, and what she must be going through. So that's just one of the biggest cases that I've had that I could think of that we had to really pull trauma-informed care in, to change the environment, to set it up in a safe way, to collaborate with her, to empower her, to recognize what she must be going through and touch on those subjects and not avoid them. And then really setting her up the best we could for all the resources possible, working with social work, working with law enforcement advocacy, getting her connected to everything we could to get her the help she needed. These are the principles that we should all bring into our care with, no matter what your role is. If you're working with potentially abused elders or vulnerable adults, you really need to be putting these principles into your work. And I believe that's my last slide. We're going to have question time at the end, unless there's any now that are in the chats. I just mostly want you all to know that I am open. Doors are open, phone is open. Anytime I can help anybody. It doesn't matter your role, medical or not. I'm more than willing to help. And we'll answer questions at the end if you have them.
Well, that was great, Julie. Thank you so much. And I do encourage everybody to go ahead and put any questions there. There's a question box for that purpose. And I know that Teresa is keeping an eye on those for us. So we definitely encourage you to ask questions if you have them. That was great information about what SC Safe Seniors is doing, and some really great tips on what we should be doing as people who are assisting our elder folks in South Carolina. So I'm Susan Ingalls. I'm going to give the Ingalls legal angle here about South Carolina Legal Services and what we do in this arena of helping our older citizens here in South Carolina. Just quickly about us, not everyone knows, but we are a statewide nonprofit law firm. So we have 9 offices all around the state of South Carolina, serving all of the counties in South Carolina. So the services we provide are free, and it's civil legal assistance, not criminal. And you do have to be eligible based on your income level and sometimes being in a special population. So one of the special populations that we do serve through certain funding is our senior population. So if we determine that you are eligible for our services, we have an intake process, an 800 number, but we also have intake on our website, which you'll see on the concluding slide that I have, the ways that you can get in touch with us. But we have different types of levels of assistance, and I think that's important to know, because not everything we do involves a lawsuit. Somebody doesn't have to have been sued or want to sue someone else just to be able to get our services. So these are just some of the ways that we help people with legal matters. Sometimes it's just a matter of them getting some advice about the legal problem that they have and how they might be able to handle it. That's sort of the first level of service that we have. And then there might be brief assistance. We help you fill out some paperwork, or we help in some other brief way, giving you some information. We have a lot of brochures on different legal topics, so sometimes we're giving you that kind of information and resources. And then the third level is extended representation, and that usually does involve representing you in an actual lawsuit. So that's a much more involved type of legal assistance. And then we also refer people to other agencies for assistance. If it's something that really isn't a legal matter that we can help with, then we refer to our partners quite often. Now, I do want to make this point because not everyone realizes this. There's, we all know about the public defender. So when you are charged with a crime, if you are low income or indigent, you are entitled to a lawyer from the public defender's office, no matter what. For us, doing the civil legal aid, we don't have that kind of, first of all, mandate, but also that kind of manpower and staff. And so we have to be very careful that when we accept a case, that it's one that certainly is eligible, but that also is a priority type of case for us. We just can't accept everybody's case, which is unfortunate because we would like to, but we can't. We just don't have the manpower for that. So you just have to be financially eligible. And then there's a review process after that. But we do try to help as many people as we can. So here's some of the areas of law of cases that we handle. And you see, here we have elder law, and I've highlighted that. And because number one, that's what we're talking about today. But number two, we call it elder law, but it's all these other different kinds of law that you see here on this slide that elderly people face, just like everyone else. And so, but we have that, additional focus on our elderly population. And so these are all the sort of legal units that we have. We have units in our law firm so that we make sure and address all of these areas of law. And the elder law is one of those that has some issues that are particular to older folks, but usually it's all of these other type of legal matters as well. So how can we help our seniors in South Carolina? Well, as I said, elder law encompasses so many different areas, and it's a really important part of our practice here at South Carolina Legal Services. One of the things we do, other than just providing that legal representation and that education about all the different types of law that we practice, is something like what we're doing today, is collaborating with partners. Not only do we collaborate within our law firm with all these other units that practice different types of law, we do collaborate and partner with other organizations. And today is the kickoff of the World Elder Abuse Awareness is one of the things that we're most excited about partnering in, especially when it comes to our older citizens. But for example, in May, for Older Americans Month, we partnered with our units within our law firm, as well as other organizations. For example, Teresa did a presentation for us that included not only the concept of Older Americans Month, but also mental health awareness, which was also observed in May. So that was really great. I encourage everybody to look up that video on our YouTube channel. It was really awesome. And as with everyone, I want to mention, we all want to try to provide holistic services to folks to the extent that we can. And so we do. That's one of the reasons we have the referral process, and we do education and participate in things like what we're doing today to find out ways that we can help people besides the legal problem that they have, because quite often they have other issues that are beyond that most pressing legal issue that they have come to us about. So it's important, just as that wonderful story and description that Julie gave, you really have to be mindful of everything that is going on with people, especially when they are older. So I'm not an artist, but I drew this little, I guess you could call it a cartoon, because I wanted to share this idea, because so often our older citizens are facing some sort of physical abuse and neglect, and obviously that's something that we want to deal with right up front, and that's the most important thing. But we also need to remember, as shown here in this cartoon, that once that has somehow been removed, that threat has been removed, everything doesn't just go back to normal. So you can see here, law enforcement says, oh, everything's going to be okay now. We're taking, this predator or this person who's been abusing or neglecting you away, and so everything's fine. But you see that Mr. Johnson here still has quite a lot of burdens that he is having to deal with, whether it be his income, being able to pay his rent or mortgage, maybe his heat doesn't work, he's got issues with his bank account, maybe having trouble getting food on the table, any number of things. And so as he goes on down the road back to home sweet home, here are some of the things that we see that our clients are facing. Once that threat has been removed, that neglect has been, addressed and is being taken care of, here's the things that Mr. Johnson is headed for, right? First of all, he's on the way home to what we would hope would be home sweet home, but first stop is his mailbox, where he is getting targeted mailers, right? Because he's a senior, and the senior population can often be vulnerable to these targeted mailers that are promising, great things. Another thing that we see a lot of, live loan checks. It's an actual check, but it's a loan. It's a check that represents a loan, and once you deposit it in your account, it's a loan. And you might think you're getting that awesome, exciting, unexpected check for $1,200, but after you deposit it, you come to find out that if you had read the paperwork that came with it, it's a loan with a very high interest rate, and that's sometimes hard for people to get out of that cycle of that kind of loan. Another thing that our seniors will get in the mail is debt collection threats, and they threaten anything from taking your home or all your money to going to jail. And of course, typically none of that is going to happen, certainly not going to jail. But you also see, as he progresses towards the door to his home, here's some other things that he might be facing. Mold or other environmental issues inside his home. We would hope that that's part of the things that home check would catch and be able to refer that person to us or somewhere else for help with that. But that's something that may have gone unnoticed because it wasn't like a huge problem yet. Door-to-door sales for older people is a real problem that we see from a legal standpoint. And just as a side note, door-to-door sales in South Carolina are basically the one thing that has a 3-day right of rescission. So you can cancel the deal if you do it within 3 days. A lot of people don't know that. We sometimes think of car purchases as having that 3-day right of rescission, but they don't, not by law anyway. Some dealers will give you that, but by law, that's not the case. So door-to-door sales that we see are things like solar panels, going to save you money, supposedly, selling fire alarms, intruder alarms, and things like that. There's alarm systems. We're all concerned about things like that, obviously, but I think older folks maybe more than most, and so they're an easy target for those types of door-to-door sales. We see a lot of that. And then, unfortunately, there may be children, grandchildren, friends, neighbors, church members who are just waiting to, take their piece of the pie from their grandmother or friend or whatever. So those are some of the things that they face. And then we have the cloud. More and more seniors are, on the internet. They have computers, and this is where a lot of the problems will come when it comes to income and having their money stolen. We have, identity theft is a big one. Obviously, hacking your computer, getting access to your computer without you realizing that that's what you gave permission for. And then also the big one, romance scams. We've talked many times about how isolated seniors can become, and they're very susceptible to a person pretending to be in a relationship or want to be in a relationship with them. And it's really incredible how that person can get a hold of you and just convince you to give them money. And it's a real problem. And I find that sadly our seniors don't always believe us as attorneys that they have sought the advice and counsel of over the person that they think they're in a romantic relationship with. And I know that a recent report by the Department of Consumer Affairs here in South Carolina, they have complaints and reports of identity theft, scams, etc. And romance scams or relationship imposters was number 3 of the top 3 of those type of imposter scams. The other 2 being government imposters, and then business imposters, which obviously happens a lot with the computer hacking. So this is just my little weirdly drawn cartoon to give you an idea about what all seniors are facing. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of what we see, but these are things that we can sometimes help with. Unfortunately, sometimes it's just too late. But at the same time, there are times when we can, we can help those seniors out. So here's some ways, just real quickly, where legal issue spotting can help. And I've really already just talked about that, but, addressing a financial issue, maybe a senior is being threatened by that debt collector and they pay that first because that's the scariest one, the one that's calling them all the time. But they do that to the detriment of or to the exclusion of paying their rent or getting their groceries. Medical issues can also be an issue for folks. And then issues with benefits like Social Security, unemployment, any number of benefits that seniors might be receiving, even VA benefits. There's ways that we can help with those as well. So I just wanted to just mention some examples there. And now, if we can, I want to share with y'all a couple of stories, and it's really other people sharing their story. And the first one is a client that we had who was alerted by his sister's doctor and they're both older citizens here. And he was actually in another state and got a call from the doctor about some issues that his sister was having, and he came to the rescue. But as a result, it caused him some legal problems of his own, so we ended up having to help both of them. Let's go ahead and roll that video. Okay, we're here today with Mr. James Peak, who is a past client of our Medical Legal Partnership, or MLP, at South Carolina Legal Services. And Mr. Peak, we're talking about the importance of spotting legal issues for older Americans. And I would like for you to share with us what transpired with you and your sister, so that if not for that doctor noticing or spotting the problem for your sister, she might have really been in a bad situation. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, 4 or 5 years ago, my sister was diagnosed with dementia, Alzheimer's. And of course, that made her vulnerable to those who would exploit someone with that type of diagnosis. And she called me and let me know that she was concerned about her. And I came up to see for myself and decided to step in and make some arrangements for her.
Okay, and what was the initial problem that was going on that you found?
Well, the initial problem was her so-called friends and even one relative, whom I thought would be very welcoming for me to be here, started pushing back. And that kind of made me think there might be something going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed she had a box of receipts, and I started looking through those receipts and her mail that had accumulated. And I found one receipt that indicated her house might be up for foreclosure for non-payment on property tax. I looked at the car, the tag was expired, but yet it was supposed to have been taken care of by those so-called friends and relatives.
Wow, I bet that was shocking.
It was very shocking, especially combined with the pushback I was getting from them. And then finally, that even led to a false claim that she was asking me to leave, and one of those persons filed an eviction notice on me.
And so at that point, were you able to connect with South Carolina Legal Services and begin to get the legal representation that not only you needed at that point, having been served with eviction, but that your sister needed as well to clear up some of the things that had happened to her?
Yes, at that point, I connected with legal services and they took it from there and resolved those matters.
Well, I think this story, and we really appreciate you filling us in a little bit on it. I think this story just goes to show the importance of legal issue spotting. It can be by anyone. It might be by the doctor, as it was here. It might be by a person with a organization that serves seniors in the community. It might be a church member who is actually has the person's best interest at heart and gets an older person to the right place. But I think this is a great example of how collaboration between legal services and some of our partners can, at an early point of intervention, really help. It sounds
Yeah.
like your sister was not being physically abused or neglected or anything, but it may be that these kind of legal problems could have exacerbated her situation. And so I think it's just so great that her doctor spotted this situation and then reached out to you. And it's a shame
Yes,
that you had to go through what you went through trying to help her. But it's a great example of, I think, legal issue spotting for an older American early enough to actually do something about the problem.
that is true because I looked at some of the receipts and they were overcharges. In fact, there was one receipt for a new car battery, but yet the car did not have a new car battery replaced
Oh, wow.
and things like that.
Yeah. So not only were they not taking care of her bills, they were using her money to take care of their own bills and things like that.
Apparently so.
And as I understand it, you had told me earlier, these people were a variety of um, friends, maybe relatives, um, family, or even church friends, which is
Well,
somebody you would normally trust.
one was a nephew connected with several church members, and it seemed like they were all ganged up together on me.
Hmm.
And they were all, I felt like they were speaking as one to get me out of the picture.
And, I think without the legal representation, it sure would have been very difficult for you to fight that whole other group who wanted to, cover up what they had been doing. So I think it's a wonderful story, and we thank you so much for sharing it with us today.
Yes, as soon as the legal representation stepped in, they kind of backed away and never heard from them again.
And I understand that things are going well for you and your sister now, living in
Well,
Simpsonville, right?
yes, things have become more of a loving, caring relationship between the two of us.
Well, that's great. Congratulations. And thank you again so much for joining us. Well, that was a great story of how partners coming together in our medical legal partnership up here in the upstate really helped out a lot with this gentleman and his sister. And I have one more quick story I would like to share. And this is an attorney who we talked to who represented a client of ours and actually continues to try to help him get possession of his home back. So let's go to that video. I'm Susan Ingalls from South Carolina Legal Services, and I am here with Emily Brown, who is a lawyer here in South Carolina, and she is one of our private attorney involvement folks. We call it the PAI program, and that program solicits and partners with lawyers like Emily and asks them to, as part of their practice, handle some cases for us. And of course, we do pay them for what they do, and it's not as much as they probably normally make in their practice. So we really appreciate when an attorney like Emily will handle one of these cases for us. And let me just mention that you can reach Emily at emilybrownlaw.com. That's her website. And so I encourage people to check that out. But in the meantime, Emily, I'd like for you to share with us a story of one of the clients that you have that has ran into sort of a legal issue spotting situation and how that developed, just to, I think, highlight for us as we're wanting to do in these videos, the importance of people spotting those legal issues. So go ahead and share with us what you can about that situation.
So I have a client who was very concerned about losing his home if he had to go to a nursing home or some sort of a assisted care facility. And he talked with his tax professional about it. A tax professional suggested to my client that he have a deed done so that the property was no longer in his name. And so my client went to see a lawyer. The end result of that was deeding the property to his son, retaining a life estate in the name of the client. And then my client thought that he had resolved his problem. Unfortunately, after the fact, my client's son actually kicked his dad out of the property. And so now I'm trying to work with my client, and we're to go back and get him possession of the property back again. And so it's just a very unfortunate circumstance for my client. Thought he had resolved everything, and it didn't work out exactly like he planned.
Yeah, we've been talking about the importance of legal issue spotting and how it can prevent something. And actually, it sounds like this client was sort of going down the right path, getting the advice, trying to prepare for, what he wanted to accomplish from a legal standpoint. And I think it's a great example of how even when you do that, there still may be another legal issue that follows that. And it's important to know how to spot something like that and know that there may still be a way that a lawyer can be helpful to that senior.
Yes. Yes. Just because it did this, I think my client took a path that's common. A lot of people choose to handle the situation the way my client did. Unfortunately, my client just did not have a good result, but it's not the end of the road. And so there are often remedies there, and we just have to take some time and look for them.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that what he chose to do is a bad way to go. Like you say, a lot of people do that, and it can be really helpful from an estate, planning. If you own your home, you want to make sure your children get it when you pass away, but you still want to be able to live there. So it's a common thing that people do. So, just have an unfortunate situation with one of the people who was given the property and not supposed to get it until after he passed away. So it's so great that you're helping him, and hope that it all works out for him. And we sure do appreciate you sharing that story with us.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Yeah, and thanks again for being one of our PAI attorneys, Emily.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, there's so many angles to the legal issues that come up, and who knew that this individual who, retained a life estate in his property, thinking he would continue to live there, but apparently he was convinced somehow to move, and now Emily's helping him hopefully get that possession of that life estate back. So those are a couple of stories from us on how that legal angle can really be helpful in situations that our elders face. So here is a slide just giving our information about how to contact us. If you need legal representation or you want to refer somebody for legal representation, all of our resource locations are here, whether it be our social media, our law help website, and our main SC Legal website, where we will have all the information about the other World Elder Abuse Awareness activities this month. And you can see that I have highlighted our YouTube channel. I do encourage you to check that out. We have any number of videos on legal topics. We do our Level Up Law show every Tuesday at noon, and that's live. So it's always on the calendar on our sclegal.org website. So definitely check that out, but also check out the playlist for Level Up Law on our YouTube page, because we are probably going to hit 100 episodes sometime this summer. So that's very exciting for us, and we hope that that's helping people out. So that is it from me.
Well, I am just going to finish us off with a thank you and some conclusions. There doesn't seem to be any questions in the chat yet. I did want to give it an opportunity if anyone had questions or comments to pop those into the question box. But as people potentially do that, I just wanted to sort of sum up everything that we learned today. I think it's so important to hear these two perspectives of how the medical side can handle things and how that trauma-informed lens can be applied to any of our roles. You don't have to be a forensic nurse examiner. You don't have to be a licensed mental health provider. You don't have to be a lawyer in order to do that. You know, any of us can look at an older adult and acknowledge that things may have happened to them, which can be affecting how they are presenting to us right now. One of the things that I like to quote Julie on is, let's believe people. Let's believe them when they say that something is happening to them, because it could be from their perspective. And you may be the first person they have gotten the gusto to tell. So let's believe them so that they're more likely to reach out for legal assistance and take that, because as Julie mentioned, they might be scared of the legal actions, and it doesn't always equal criminal, right? We have these other interventions that Susie highlighted that might be available to this victim, to this survivor, and letting them know the options and helping them work through some of those feelings that come along after this trauma has occurred. This is the first of our events this month. We have so much going on. Mara was able to put those in the chat, and here's a slide with that. Next week, you can join SC Safe Seniors for our statewide virtual resource fair. This is our second year doing the virtual fair. I want to make sure I talk fast. It's a very exciting event. You'll have lots of information. And then June 15th is an in-person event in Columbia. So it's the WEAD walk and then a proclamation from the governor. And then we have on June 22nd, Be a Light in a Dark World. So that's from the Respite Coalition and the Department on Aging. I'm really excited for that talk. And lastly, another in-person event. We're going to round it out our last WEAD Wednesday. And so that is an in-person conference focusing for victims advocates, law enforcement, and first responder chaplains. Even if you don't fit within that box and you want to be there and you want to learn, please join us. There's going to be lots of great information. And so we're really excited for that all-day event and the opportunity to be in person. Can't wait to meet everybody. We've worked together for a couple of years and I haven't met everyone yet. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We love helping. That's the purpose of us being here. So again, thank you. Here is our contact information. If you need us, we're here. And welcome to WEAD Wednesdays, the month we have. So thanks and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you joining us.